is Tuesday, March the 9th. I'll call the meeting if we have a quorum. I'm not sure we do. I'm sorry. Miss Sandy, do you know, Miss Ramsey, do you know if we have a quorum?
You don't, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Right now, there's no council persons on that I know of.
Okay. Well, I'll fill in some time, I guess.
Mr. Wren is on.
Hello, Mayor.
Hey, Mr. Wren. I've been out. Well, I've been out from City Hall all day. Have you had a chance to talk to Mr. Valley today? Or
Yes, briefly.
okay. Well, we'll start with you as soon as we can get a quorum.
You still don't have anybody.
Okay.
I'll update you. I'm a weatherman.
Hey, Kevin, this is Jessica. I'm going to just keep myself on mute until you tell me or ask me anything, okay? I'm just going to be in your
Okay.
background, and when you need me, just holler.
Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Kevin, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'll just use this time so far. Some of you it won't matter, but some of you it might. East Arkansas Family Health Center and Helena-West Street this Friday, March the 12th, we'll have a vaccination clinic from 12 to 3. There's a phone number to call. There's no out-of-pocket insurance expense or anything like that. There's a phone number to call to register to get the vaccine. Yesterday, the governor opened it up to what they're calling 1B, which should include most of our essential workers for city government, which is exciting to me, and also a lot of other people. And I encourage you to encourage you, if you hear this and you're able and you're not vaccinated, to go by East Arkansas Family Health Center on Porter Street. Make a reservation or call them first and make a reservation. It starts at 12 o'clock on Friday, and we're going to do everything we can to help them. UAMS East, we used to call Delta AHEC here in Helena, had a very successful clinic last week, I believe it was, and I haven't heard an official number, but I think the goal is 200 and they got over that. So we have a long way to go still to get to what they call herd immunity, but we're going to make every effort to do that and get us there. So our first responders got their second shot and were vaccinated several weeks ago now. Our firemen and policemen, and now our water and sewer personnel, our sanitation detail, our landfill personnel, all of whom worried me quite a bit during this pandemic, and we're marking a year now since it began for us, and it's been a very tough year. just on that alone, let alone all the other things. But it's a very big relief to me to know that we're finally going to be able to get there with vaccinations for our city personnel and of course everybody else. And we're not going to be there until most of our citizens, the vast majority. I heard different numbers, but something like 70%. That's a high number, and it's going to take some time to get there. So we're not out of the woods by any means, but we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. So that's really good news. Do we have a quorum yet?
No, so you just have one.
Okay. I think what we're going to do, meeting, we'll wait a few more minutes, and we have some legal businesses tend to with Mr. Wren and the municipal league first. As soon as we get a quorum, Ms. Ramsey, if you'll interrupt me and let me know, then I'll stop what I'm doing and we'll immediately call the roll and get started.
Yes, sir.
So I'll start with a general breakdown of the water crisis that we're in or have been in. We're in an emergency proclamation over the water issue. It began several weeks ago with the problem in West Helena with our filtration system and our aerator and the lack of water. And then we had a boil order because of the lack of pressure, water pressure. Then we had the snowstorm on the heels of that. And then right after, Mr. Walland and Reese Construction were able to do something I think is really big news for our community. We restored the link between the two cities' water systems. And while it's not a panacea, it's not going to solve every problem or help everything. And it's not even going to be used most of the time. And we hope it never gets used. But if we had our tanks in Helena full when the West Helena crisis began, we could have fed water into that system and helped alleviate that problem or bought some time if that link had been established. So it's too late to use it for that, obviously, but it was during that crisis that it came to our attention that at some point in the last several years, a link was removed from it and the valves turned off and it was no longer connected. So it is now connected, and that's big news for the community. But it's like I said, it's not something that I want to mislead people. It doesn't mean that it will come to our rescue in every case. So we have to have enough water to feed it. So if we, for example, during the winter storm, we did not have enough water in either system. We were struggling to keep water in both systems, so neither system would have been able to come to the aid of the other. And so it's not a panacea. But on the other hand, it would have helped us buy some time for the West Helena crisis. And it also, this is kind of an insurance policy for some circumstances. And if we can ever get to the point financially where we can do a booster station of some kind, it will also help Helena more than it would currently in the future. So it's just another tool in the toolbox that we have that we once had before, and we're able to restore it now. So that's important news. And I'm assuming Miss Sandy's going to interrupt me if we get that quorum, Mr. Wren.
I will. You
So
have
that's
two.
one. Okay,
You
good.
Yeah, you only have two.
So with me, that means we need one more.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Effler text me said he's trying to log in, Mayor. I don't know if he's in the waiting room or what, but he's trying to log in.
Okay, thank you. And I'll probably turn this over to you, Mr. Valley, as soon as we call the roll for this part of it. And for the rest of you who don't know, we have a court settlement issue, or not a court settlement, a lawsuit settlement issue. And the municipal league is the lawyer for the city. So Mr. Wren is our lawyer, and he is here to advise us on that matter. And we have to, the council has to approve it. We have to be in a legally organized council meeting in order to do that.
Mr. Ethel's in.
Okay, so we have a quorum.
Yes,
Okay. All right, so I will officially call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and I'll ask you, Ms. Ramsey, to call the roll.
St. Columbia, Franklin, Crockett. Ms. Crockett's on, but she's muted. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Ford, Etherly, Mr. Etherly's on, but he's muted. So that's 3 council persons and the mayor.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And want to welcome all of our guests. We have a lot of guests tonight, actually, who are here. Some just to speak and brief us, and some to answer questions. Before we get to the water issue, which is the purpose of this special call meeting, we did add something that was time sensitive to the agenda tonight. So I'm going to ask Mr. Valley if he would introduce this first part of the meeting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you, everyone on the line. Attorney Keith Wren is on the line. He is outside counsel with the Arkansas Municipal League, and he handles the case of Dwayne Harvey versus the City of Helena-West Helena. He's previously updated us on offer of judgment. It's my understanding that a compromise has been reached, and we need this body to approve it. And with that, I yield to Attorney Keith Wren.
Thank you, Andre. Again, my name is Keith Wren. I'm an attorney here in Little Rock. I was before you 3 weeks ago to discuss this matter. At that point, we were, I think the words I used were that we were at a crossroads in the case. In other words, the judge had decided to allow the case to go to trial. It was my opinion that there are some issues in this case that I do not think that the city will be successful on. Former Chief Green had decided to take what's called an interlocutory appeal, meaning that under special circumstances, certain parties can take an appeal even before the case goes to trial. However, taking all of those things into consideration, in this case, the question was, how much money do we want to spend on further litigation in a case that's probably going to wind up in court anyway? So the situation we were in was that we had tried previously to settle this case at a settlement conference in front of the United States Magistrate. That was unsuccessful. Various motions were filed in the years following that attempt to settle the case. And then we basically wound up right back where we are. So when I came before you 3 weeks ago, we talked about using a tactic called an offer of judgment. In other words, rather than saying we will give you X dollars to go away completely and resolve all issues, attorney's fees, everything, what we did was we made what's called an offer of judgment. And what it means is that we made an offer that says, okay, you can take a judgment against us for this amount, and then we will work out the fees and the costs later. We had hoped that by doing that, we would be able to work towards actually getting a settlement in place. That is what usually happens, but of course, that isn't what always happens. And in this particular case, the plaintiff, Mr. Harvey, through his attorney, has decided to accept the offer of judgment in the amount of $25,000. He will also get to make a claim for attorney's fees and costs. That amount is yet to be determined. But be that as it may, He has accepted the offer of judgment. So that means that it's as if the court were to have made a finding in his favor and entered a judgment in the amount of $25,000. So while we are trying to work out the issues of the attorney's fees and costs, it is important to not further interrupt any city services by the plaintiff attempting to execute on any of the city's assets or garnish bank accounts or anything like that. The coverage in this case through the municipal league is 50-50 coverage. So in order for the municipal league to issue payment in the amount of $25,000 judgment, the city will need to authorize a payment to the municipal league for its half of $12,500. So I'm here in front of you tonight to ask that the council authorize that expenditure to the municipal league, so that when the judgment is formally entered, the payment will take place, and then of course there will be further litigation and/or negotiation on the issue of attorney's fees and costs. But the last thing we want to have happen is for a judgment to be entered, and then that the plaintiff, through his attorney, attempt to take collection efforts and disrupt city services. Andre, have I missed anything?
No, Keith, you haven't missed anything. You covered it all in that.
Thank you. And if any of you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Mayor, on the issue of payment of the settlement amount, $12,500, I would move that we approve the expenditure.
Second.
Sorry, Mr. Etherly makes a motion that we adopt the settlement offer and approves the $12,500, and Ms. Davis seconded the motion. Are there any questions or comments about the motion? If not, did I state that motion correctly? I want to make sure I did that. Is that the motion we need?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ramsey, call the roll.
Davis,
Yes.
Crockett, okay, Crockett,
Yes.
Etherly,
Yes.
Ford, Franklin, St. Columbia, Smith,
Yes.
4 yes.
What were we voting on?
Mr. Franklin,
We're voting, Ms. Franklin, we're voting on the issue of the $25,000 settlement offer of judgment. The city's portion is $12,500, and that does not include attorney fees, and we'll come back to that. But that's what the vote is on.
Who, Mr. Valley? I'm sorry.
Dwayne Nate Harvey.
Yes, sir. I vote yes on that. Yes. 25,000. That's all they asking for.
No, that's just that doesn't count attorney fees. That's just his portion there.
Okay. All right. Yes.
thank you.
Okay, is anybody else going to vote? If not, motion passes. Thank you very much. Mr. Valley or Mr. Wren?
I will be back in touch with you through Andre as the case progresses. Again, I hope to get things resolved amicably, but if not, then we'll just have another issue to fight over. But hopefully we're going to try to get this thing resolved, and I'll be back in touch with you as soon as I have new information.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Wren.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Thank you, City Council. And the rest of you, thank you for your patience, because we did tell you it was going to be water only, and it just kind of came up at the last minute. So thanks for your indulgence. So we're going to move next to the purpose of the meeting, which is the discussion of the water issue. Let me kind of preface this by saying, I guess make sure we're all on the same page. I said some of this already, but several weeks ago, we had our first crisis when we had a problem at the West Helena plant, water plant, or West treatment plant. And that had a lot to do with our filtration and system and our aerator, among other things. And we lost water to several neighborhoods in West Helena and what's used to be known as West Helena. It's serviced by what was the West Helena treatment plant. We call it the West plant now, but I just try to say that for clarification purposes. But and then because of the loss of pressure, we had a bull order that lasted a long time, and of course is a very inconvenient thing, particularly for our restaurants, food service vendors, who most of whom are on that system. And then we had the snowstorm, which created problems for cities all over. I think it was reported well over 20 some odd in Arkansas, Memphis Light Gas and Water, Jackson, Mississippi, and in many, many rural and smaller systems were shut down completely. We had a very close call on the east side. Well, actually both sides, to be honest. The west side had the same challenges that Helena had and all cities had, that had to endure that. And it was precipitated in part by consumption, and for a lot of reasons that probably are above my pay grade. But at any rate, it was a struggle in West Helena also. I don't want to not mention that, because it was touch and go. And the people on this call tonight and a few others were the brain trust that literally saved our community from the fate that happened in those other cities. Helena, though, had the biggest crisis and did end up having a bull order, and some users did go without water for extended periods of time. But we were very close to losing water for the entire system, East system, Helena system, for weeks, not just days. It could have been way, way worse. It was precipitated because we had the same challenges all cities had, but there was a dramatic loss of water overnight, beginning Friday afternoon. And by Saturday morning, we were able to locate that leak and or that water loss and deal with it. But by that time, our tanks were so depleted that it was a struggle all day Saturday to keep the tanks above consumption. And so some of our users lost water, a lot of our users lost water pressure. We thought we might be out of it. And then Sunday morning, our pump at our main east station for our well pump, our main well pump at our main east West or Helena water plant gave out. And primarily because the pumps were operating so hard to get water back up in those tanks and to maintain water against consumption and the rest of it. Our crews were out doing everything they could. And I can't say enough good things about the work that everyone did, both who work for the city and as well as our vendors, as well as people like the Arkansas Rural Water Association. Chris Harris and his team at one point 3 people came down and stayed for many, many days to see us through this. And I mean, we just quite simply couldn't have made it without them. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to everybody on this call tonight, as well as our employees. And Acting General Manager Jeff Patterson did a remarkable job at a very difficult time, keeping all those balls in the air. And I want to be sure and say that. Now, we were able at the very last minute, when we thought we were about to lose the entire system, open up another well that replenished our tanks at the last minute. And it really was the last minute that saved our system from completely shutting down. However, the question that we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not to restore usage of that main water pump, well pump at the Helena station, treatment station, and what those options are. That's probably the predominant decision that we need guidance on tonight. In addition, and you had emailed to you the list of expenditures that we made during this emergency crisis period, and along with the invoices. I kind of hesitate to go over every single one, but we can certainly take questions on all of them. I basically refer you back to what I call the Bible. It's actually done before I became mayor. Some of you might recognize this, but it was a report that was actually done, or an assessment, a comprehensive assessment that was done in 2017. I'm happy to say that the sewage treatment ponds in Helena that take up at least a third of that report have been completed, and we are out of danger there. And that's good news. And we did that with the help for federal funding from the Delta Regional Authority primarily, and other sources. However, the other issues in that report remain relevant today. And one of the issues that was brought up back at that time was the significant aging of the system that we have, both at the Helena plant and the West Helena plant. And so there would be many issues, maintenance issues and so forth, that we would have to face in the future. Well, the future's here, and the snow emergency forced that issue. And so we did have a pump go down on us. We have many, many other maintenance issues to talk about overall, and many decisions to make in the coming weeks. We won't make them all tonight. We won't make them all Tuesday night. But I felt like we needed a specially called meeting to discuss it. Now, in 2017, the city was losing approximately $600,000. Well, I can't speak for 2017. Well, I guess I can, because I did look back later. 2017, 2018, probably a good measure of 2019. The water department was losing approximately $600,000 a year. The sewer side of the water and sewer department was losing $400,000 a year, approximately $1 million a year. So without the rate increases, there was really nothing but a bleak outlook. And the things, other than the federal money that we received, the things in that book I just showed you have very little chance of being accomplished because it just wasn't enough money. So the city council and the administration both bit the bullet and dealt with that issue, and I'm still proud that we did. And but we still have a long way to go to fix these problems. So I'll be quiet now. And I think if I could recognize Ken Weiland with Weiland Associates. And Ken, if you would mind, if we could focus on the Helena well pump first, then we can take time on the other issues. And if you could lay out briefly the options that we've discussed on that issue, if you would. Is Ken still on?
Y'all hear me now?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to all the guests and council members. Yeah, it was a difficult time, and one of the issues is the well. And just so that everyone understands, you've got basically 4 operational wells out there, or 4 wells that can be operated, with, if they're cared for, if things are done to them. One being the well at the plant. We call it the plant well. That well is about a 550 gallon a minute well. What happened during the emergency is the capacity on that well began falling. Now, at that time, we couldn't produce enough water for the water that was escaping through all the dripping faucets, through leaks, through consumption. And so that was a critical thing, to lose the raw water that comes to the treatment plant, which is filtered, processed, and then pumped into the system. We just couldn't produce enough water. So that really accelerated how critical the issue became on that Sunday, until we got the well on Phillips Street running. But now the issue is the plant well, and I think Mr. Jones is online, and he can tell you more about that well. But from the city's standpoint, you really need all of these wells, not necessarily that you have to have all of them producing water at the same time, but when you have a situation of power emergency or any kind of emergency, you need to have standby wells. You've got the Phillips Street well is 1,400 gallons a minute. The Missouri Street well is 1,000. And then the plant well and the well just south of it called the Bisco well produce a little over 1,000 between the two of them, one 550 and one 800. The Bisco well is not in service at this time, and the mayor has called a well service in to take a look at that and see if they can actually get it going. But the plant well, and Mr. Jones needs to speak to that, he came and looked at that. I mean, obviously one of the issues is that the well is older than I am. And I'm probably older than most of y'all. So that tells you how old that well is. Now, he can't tell you, or you can ask him, he probably can't tell you exactly what's wrong. But it's more than likely it could be an impeller issue. And he would have to pull that well to look at it. So he has given you a proposal with an estimate that I think you got in your package, to pull that well and try to do what he can to get the production rate of that well back up. Now, we've brought the Phillips Street well online. The biggest issue with the Phillips Street well is that the quality of the water isn't quite as good as the quality of the water in the other wells, and that's normal. You put down 5 wells and you're going to have 5 different levels of quality, just because the strata changes as you move around. But there's something that we can do to the Phillips Street well to get it to where we can actually, the city could cycle it in and give that plant well a little bit of rest. One of the other things that Mr. Jones' report identifies is that it could be, it's been operating so long, it may have begun drawing the water down to the top of the well. So it probably would be good to have the ability to let that well rest. Up to now, they've been using that well and the Missouri Street well just about full time. By bringing in the Phillips Street well, mixing it with the other water and cycling all the wells, you can still keep your water quality up, but let that plant well rest. Now, the other reason to the well that's south of that, the Bisco Street well, needs to be brought online because it also serves as a backup. Now, that well, even though it hadn't been operated since I've been here, it's my understanding it does have a level of iron in it, and it was producing a small amount of sand when they stopped using that well. But it certainly would benefit the city to have it as a standby well. And it's also my understanding there may even be a standby motor that will drive that well if you had a power emergency that could be reinstalled on that well. So that's on that well, it's really a matter of having someone come just look and see what it would take to get it running again. And be available if we have another emergency. The next decision you need to make is, do you want to approve the well Jones to come in and take a look at that plant well? That well, again, that's the one you've been using. You probably need to let him look and see what he can do to try to recapture some of its capacity. And then you've got the Missouri Street well and now the Phillips Street well. Mayor, I don't know, is that what you wanted me to kind of give him a general briefing on the wells?
Yes. So basically, we have a well that's nearly reached its lifespan at the main plant, but we might be able to squeak some more life out of it, and the water's very good there. And then you have the Phillips Street well, which we're using, which saved the day, but has some minor quality issues. And then it's not safety, it's just things like taste and smell, but those are things that the public can't really discern once it's mixed in the mixing plant. But it's just something that needs to be said about that well. And it's, I guess, our newest well is also. And then you have the Biscoe Street well, which he was talking about, which has some sand in it that might be able to be brought online. So those are the three things. Whereas before we had just the Helena, well, not just the Helena well, but that's the one the main one, and that's the one that shut down, and it's there at the plant. And then you have Phillips Street, which is working now, but has some treatment issues. It could develop later. It's not there now, but it's something that we could have to face in the future. But basically what we're saying is we need another well online. Either the older one that went out, or if the one on Biscoe works, possibly that one. Having said that, I'm going to recognize Jeff Jones, who is one of our contractors and vendors who works on well pumps and does well pumps out of Stuttgart. Jeff, are you still on?
Yes.
Would you pick up where we left off on the issue about the wells?
Yes. And I appreciate y'all inviting me tonight. Just for reference for everybody, we've talked about the 4 wells. I thought it'd be worthwhile to bring up their ages, because the plant well was drilled in 1950. The Biscoe Street well was drilled in 1963. The Missouri Street well, 1969. And then the newest well, Phillips Street, was drilled in 2002. So just for reference, those are all, when you talk about a well that's drilled in 1950 and still in service, that's well outlived its expected life. But it has been in use. It's been one of your primary wells. And what we found the last time the pump was repaired in that well was about 10 or 11 years ago. The capacity has dropped down, and part of that drop from our testing indicates that there's some wear in the pump that's caused that production to go down. So one of the things that would be required would be removing that pump from the well. The process from that point, once the pump is out of the well, we can measure water levels, we can measure the depth of the well, make sure it hasn't got any fill in the bottom of it, just check that part of it, and then we bring the pump in to disassemble it, inspect it, and see what the problem is, and then go about making those corrections, whether it's rebuilding the pump bowl or rebuilding the shafting, the column pipe, whatever we find on that inspection. The other thing that we did find when we pumped the well recently was that the when you pump a well, it draws down the water level. And when we open the pump up, although it's only pumping about a little around 400 gallon a minute, we saw that the water level was drawing down to the bottom of the pump. So that's an indication to us that, number one, we would need to lower the pump. Number two, there may be a reason that drawdown is happening. Possibly the screen is beginning to plug up. Sometimes that happens again with an older well. It reduces the efficiency of the well and you get additional drawdown. So that part of it, lowering the pump will help, but you're also limited as that water level goes down. You're limited on the horsepower that you have, because the farther the water is down in the well, the more horsepower it takes to bring it up. The plant well has a 40 horsepower motor on it, same as Biscoe Street. Missouri Street has a 50 horse motor, and then the Phillips Street well has a 100 horse motor. So we're limited in, when you start looking at that realistically, if we rebuild that pump, bring it back up to as new condition, with what's in there, you're probably looking at maybe 500-600 gallon a minute, depending on the amount of drawdown that we have. And,
Mayor,
and
one thing-
I guess the question that comes up is, the well is old. I think it could be maybe not used as your primary well, but I think it's got some service life left in it.
And we won't know what that service life is until you really pull it and look at it. Is that right?
That's correct.
And now, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe the estimate that you gave us on that was 33,000 to pull it. And is that right?
It was, I believe it's 27 to 32
Okay.
that's to pull it, repair it, put it back in there. And
once, let's say that you pull it, repair it, put it back in there. At that point, would we be able to use it?
yes.
We just don't know how long it'll last, probably.
Yes. And just for clarification too, when we talk about a well, you've got two main components. You got the well, which is the physical structure that's down in the ground. It's permanent. It's the well casing, the steel well casing, and the well screen. That's all permanently in the ground. And that's the part that's 50 years old, or was drilled in 1950. So it's 70 years old. So the concern with a well that age is that steel casing, we don't know how pitted it is, how corroded it is. Will it develop a hole in it 6 months down the road, or 6 years down the road, or 20 years down the road? We don't know. The second component of that well is the pump, and that's the part that we can pull out, rebuild, put back in there, and it's repairable. The big question is how long that permanent structure, what that structural integrity is of that well casing and screen.
Okay.
Mayor, one thing I'd like to point out, the importance of that well, and I really do think that well probably needs to be used more as a primary backup. And the reason being is that I know they're working hard on getting a standby generator power source for the treatment plant. That power source would run not only the treatment plant, but it runs that well. So if we have a real critical power emergency, you don't have any standby power on the Phillips Street well. You've got a gas motor driven engine on the Missouri Street well. You've got that plant well, the one we're talking about, would run off of the standby generator that runs the high service pumps and everything else at the treatment plant. And it's my understanding is that the Biscoe Street well may also have some type of a gas or diesel driven engine that could be hooked to it. Right now you've got you're vulnerable if we have a serious event that takes your power out. You've got the new well, you'd have to go and secure some type of a mobile generator to run it, whereas the plant well could immediately be run once you reestablish a generator at the treatment plant. That's why it's important as a standby backup well, if nothing else.
So you
Additional.
would go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the other things that we had talked about, and it's been a while since the Bisco Street well, we ran a test on that in 2001. And Ken had mentioned that one of the concerns was it was pumping a small amount of sand. And that's the big concern when on the well being functional, you don't want them pumping sand, because that's kind of ends the life of it. But we reported a trace of sand there. It wasn't a large volume, and I don't know if that was why that well was shut down at that time. I don't know that history, but we did test it in 2001, and I think it did have that power unit on. I don't know if it's still functioning or not.
So follow up on that, as far as the depth of the well, the water supply or availability itself, if we have an adequate pump and the well and at the Helena plant, and also I guess this might go for Bisco. I know in other places and farms and so forth, they're looking at how much water they have in the aquifer itself that they're tapping into and what the life of that is. In our case, a lot of our aquifers, especially close to the river, get recharged pretty frequently. So I guess my question is, what's the outlook on that for those wells in terms of, if you have the pump, if you have the mechanical ability, are we looking at, a situation where the water levels drop dramatically over 50 or 60 years?
No, and looking at that, I'm looking at, let's say the plant well. The records I have showed a water level back in 1950 of 40 feet. And that's really about what the last measurement we had. This one may be a little bit better on the Missouri Street well. In 1969 was 40 foot. The last recording, well, it was in 1991, it dropped to 63 foot. So, I mean, it's not drastic, and the depth of these wells, you're not getting direct recharge from the river or anything. So, but it is typically, if you look at wells in the area, maybe a foot a year, and it'll vary up and down. But long range, your water levels in that area are with a 600 foot well, and if you're less than 100 foot, you're still in good shape.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I know some places can't say that.
Right.
So, and I know the council's probably getting impatient, want to know, so what's the question before them? But real quickly on what Ken said, I think that Thursday when we had the ice storm, we lost power to the Helena station, and Entergy usually prioritizes that grid because of the Helena station. It also went down in the April Easter storm, and thanks to Entergy, that was the first area that got put back on the grid. That was the first area they concentrated on because of the importance of the water plant. So that backup generator that he's talking about, which John Edwards is helping us get through federal funding, would help us in the event that we had a winter storm like in the 90s or worse, where we had to have backup generators. And we also had a situation with the station on Oakland during the Easter storm, where we needed a generator, and the Arkansas Baptist Association and Atlas Asphalt both came to our rescue we thought we might have to have one this storm, and thankfully we didn't. But when I asked, when we looked into where the closest generator was that would be able to get used, it was in Little Rock, 2 hours, icy, well, probably more like 5 hours of icy road to get it. And so, and by the time we got it back, it would have been the station would have been shut down. Thankfully, we were able to avert that catastrophe. So the need for generators pretty serious, and I really appreciate Mr. Edwards and the Port Authority for their leadership on that. Okay, so the options before the council on this well issue you're looking at, and then there may be some, and Mr. Valley, I'm going to, and Mr. Turner, our city treasurer, I'm going to bring y'all in here for a second, but it's 33,000, or well, so I'm sorry, roughly 30,000 on pulling the pump at the Helena station, a treatment station, analyzing it, repairing it, and putting it back. And then, do we have an estimate on the Bisco well, the one with the sand in it? Or is it approximately the same cost?
We don't have an estimate on that. I think Steve was just going to look and see if they could get it, if he could get it running again. It sounds like Mr. Jones is a little familiar with it too. So that's probably, and really, like I said, the Bisco Street well would be your backup number 2. In an emergency, you probably would not want to put it online very often.
So
we don't really have.
So would it be your recommendation then to the city to consider Mr. Jones's estimate for the Helena main well pump at the Helena Treatment Center building, and then also have the Bisco Street assessed anyway, just to see what we have available there, or is it not? I mean, what would you recommend, Ken?
Well, my recommendation would be to give serious consideration to Mr. Jones' proposal. He's familiar with the well and he knows what he's doing with the well at the plant. Because again, until the emergency, that you were primarily relying on that well in the Missouri Street well. We're bringing the Phillips Street well in, and we are going to need. There is a something that we can do to kind of help the quality on that one. We can discuss that at a later date. It won't be terribly expensive, but that would get where we could use it in the Missouri Street well more, and try to rely less and less on that plant well, and have that plant well as your primary backup well, and also during high use times, running all 3. That's what we were doing during the emergency. All 3 were running. It took it all. So that just gives you another 400 to 500 gallons a minute to throw into the pot when you're in a situation where your tank has gotten low, you've got a major leak that you're just having trouble keeping up with capacity. It's good to have that treatment plant. So yes, I would. My recommendation is to give serious consideration to Mr. Jones' proposal. I think it's fair and reasonable.
All right, and before I turn it over to the council, Ms. Turner, could you give us some outlook on finances in the water department? And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Valley also on as far as our options from a parliamentary point of view, and also, of course, just questions from the council, and then I'll be quiet.
This is Derek Turner, City Treasurer. Right now, it's only 2 months information I have. Right now, the revenues are coming in pretty much close to projections, and they're clearing about, so far the last couple of months, averaging about $45,000 each month in profit so far. And so if things continue along those lines, they're operating pretty good right now. I don't see a problem with that expenditure. One thing I would like to ask him is how long would what the repair take. And
Typically,
yeah.
when we pull the pump out, the process of disassembling everything and putting it back together is probably the big question is deliveries. If we need something replaced, we have most of the pipe, shafting, a lot of the components in stock, but the actual pump bowl with the impellers, that assembly, if you ran into a situation where it was beyond repair, you had to replace it. Typical factory response right now is about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks is what they're been running.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the water department shouldn't have a problem paying it. It's just that, depending on when it's due, you know, we always have those cash flow issues to deal with, payroll and other bills, but they do have the resources now to pay this.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. And I guess Mr. Valley, too, as far as what would need to happen. But
Well,
at the same time, just open it up to everybody at this point. And the biggest question tonight is the question of the Helena well. The other issue is what we've spent so far. Many of those vendors were here tonight and able to answer questions. And the other question is, what do we need to do going forward? But the biggest decision-making question tonight is this Helena well. Thank you, Mr. Valley. I'm going to kind of turn it over to you.
okay. Well, the issue, the 33,000 is above the spending limit. Has it been 30 days since you did the declaration of an emergency?
It's been 30 days, if that was your question.
Right. So this council would have to approve the expenditure and have to waive competitive bidding on it. I think in listening to the whole discussion, I think what is most prudent and provident for the council to do is to approve the 33,000. We bring it back next week for the waive competitive bidding. But also, if I won the council, I would ask Mr. Whalen and the mayor to come up with a comprehensive plan so we can begin to incrementally fix all this stuff. The water utility is a public utility. It must continue to operate and it must be prepared to do all the things it needs to do. And there's no doubt that it needs all the things that we've spoken about need to be repaired. In addition to them being repaired, the other issue, that other concern that I would have about it is, one, the city council can have finances, but two, and as it relates to this, we probably can get some type of bond issue from the USDA or someone, natural resources to deal with this water issue and then make sure we go ahead and get it fixed. We've raised the citizens' money, the fees for purposes like this. And I think that the council not only needs to approve this, so I can bring it back next week, but look at approving a comprehensive plan by the engineer so that we can have everything laid out and everybody be on the same page and it gets approved. There's been much discussion about whether the council was told this in the past. I do not recall being told all of these things that are being said today, especially in a public forum. But I think that what needs to happen is stay on task and keep going. Instead of just being well-intentioned, let's get it done and look at a comprehensive plan from the engineer, and we incrementally do the things that we need to do to repair it all.
So I wanted to just open it up to council questions, and just go ahead and start asking your questions.
Mr. Mayor, Joe St. Columbia. I agree with our city attorney. This is a vital part of our community. We must have this water. We must have the services available, and a long-term plan to repair all this is most essential. We raise the water rates. People have to have water. I know I was without it. A lot of people in this community didn't have water for several days. We need to take this action and move forward quickly. And we got engineers here that are looking into it. We need to continue a total plan for the entire city over a long range to get it all done properly. So I'm in favor, and I endorse what our city attorney commented on, the plan that would go forward with it. And I'm very much in favor of it. I have no questions. The engineers know what they're doing, I think, and so we need to follow their lead. Thank you.
This is Everjane, and I have a comment. I agree and I concur with Andre Valley regarding having a plan. I think we need a plan at the landfill, but yeah, I think we need to have a plan. We need to follow up. I remember being told that the tower was teetering at Crowley's Ridge. I have not heard anything back from that, and that's been over a year. We do need a comprehensive plan, and we need to work toward getting these things corrected.
The west tank you were talking about, we do have some updates on that. And that was the main tank that we had issues with during this crisis. As far as the teetering issue, there's screws that lock that down into the ground, mean that it is stable for the time being, but there's one pipe exposed, and Mr. Weiland has put I'm just going to call a motion detector calibrating devices that detect the movement, shifting, and all those issues. It's safe for the time being, but the exposure on that is right now anyway, is the exposed pipe, and trying to get that ground covered up. It's not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is the problem with the hill itself, it sounds like. And I'm kind of stealing Mr. Weiland's thunder because he's the one that's been doing that. But I don't want to belabor that. That is part of something that we need to talk in coming weeks, but I did want to say that since you mentioned it. Anybody else on the council? Questions or comments? Okay. So, Mr. Valley, tonight, if it's the council's
If the council goes ahead and approve the $33,000, I'll bring back the ordinance waiver competitive bid next week. Is that the most pressing thing that, out of all these issues identified, is that the most pressing issue?
Well, I'm going to answer that one. Yes, it's the number one issue right now. The second, and a close second, would be the condition of the west plant pipes underneath. The condition of, there's some leaking there. We had serious leaking in the Helena plant, and one of the expenditures on the list that I sent you, I want to make sure I get the right one here. I believe that was Robert's. That was actually something that's, what is that? Less than 5,000, but it probably saved us. It could have saved us $1 million plus, because it's been identified as our big. We had dramatic leaks in the Helena plant, and Mr. Porterfield here is on your screen, is also working on those issues. A little bit more expensive to get that up, and we can answer questions about that later. But I would say that's a close third, is just making sure the guts of each plant are good, because all the stuff that come out of that plant, the arms that come from there, that's the heart. That's the heart of the brain and the heart, really. The brain is the SCADA system, which Jessica's on here to talk about, and we worked on both sides. But the heart are the wells and the treatment centers, the treatment plants, and we have serious issues with both of them. The most pressing immediate issue would have been the leak in Helena and the pump issue. We dealt with the leak. This is the pump issue we're discussing. And then there's the issue in West Plant, which we're still waiting on some estimates. And the filtration system in the West Plant, which we're also still waiting on some estimates. And it will be a timely, costly thing. That sounds like, but it might run us into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, especially on the west side. But it could save us millions in the future. So, but that's the answer to your question, I think.
Okay, well, yeah, I was just asking briefly, but thank you for your comprehensive response. I think that the council needs to approve the 33,000 and authorize the retention of Mr. Wyland for professional services to go forward. His fees are clearly going to be over $5,000 for all of this that we're doing, and so those are my thoughts. And I think the council needs to see something in writing from the engineer to detail exactly what it is that we did do and the cost, and both for short-term and long-term fixes for all of these. And speaking to council members off the record, they've expressed that they want to see it done, want to see a comprehensive plan. And so I think that's where we need to go and look at it. Now, I can't speak for the council. I'm just telling you what they've told me privately off the record outside of me.
Mr. Mayor, Joe St. Columbia. I think we need to take care of first things first. Right now it's at $33,000. And I make a motion that we approve the 33,000. And we're going to have waive the bidding on it. So that'll come up next week, right, Mr. Valley?
Yes, sir, Mr. St. Columbia.
So I'll make that motion and hope we get a second.
So I think maybe if we can say up to 30, is that Mr. Jones? Because I think I misspoke when I said 33.
Yeah, the original estimate, because again, we don't know until we pull the pump out of there, but I'd given kind of a range of 27 to 32. And again, when we get it out, we can kind of update things.
So I think we could probably stay within that motion as long as we say up to 33.
Up to 33,000, whatever it takes necessary to do it.
Mr. St. Columbia moves that we approve an expenditure up to $33,000 for Mr. Jones and his company to pull the Helena pump at the main plant and inspect and repair and replace. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Davis seconded the motion. Are there any questions or comments about the motion? If not, call the roll.
Franklin, Davis,
Yes.
Etherly,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Crockett,
Yes.
St. Columbia,
Yes.
Franklin. 5 yes, 1 absent.
And the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Jones and Mr. Wallen, and stay on because we're still not done yet quite. And so next week we'll
Do
come.
we have to do the thing about the competitive bidding?
I'm gonna bring that back next week, Ms. Crockett. Thank you for asking, but yes, we have to do competitive bidding. Yes, ma'am.
I'm saying, can we vote on it tonight?
I don't have all the information. I'm not at my computer.
Okay.
If I'll be near the computer within the next 20 minutes, but I don't know how much longer you're gonna be online.
Well, we have enough to talk about in 20 minutes. We'll just see where it is at that point. That's okay with everybody. I guess Mr. Valley, interrupt us if you think if we can get to a point, do it tonight. Otherwise, we'll do it Tuesday. Is that okay, Mr. Valley? You want to just let us know?
Yes, that's okay. That's okay. Yes.
If you can get to it, you can, and if not, we'll do it Tuesday.
Okay.
You know, if you do, interrupt me or whoever's talking, I guess.
All right.
So what was the second thing was brought up was the issue about doing a plan, a comprehensive plan. And it sounds like the council would like to do that, and I would also like to do that. And we're going to hold this up again just to say that it's a plan, but it's 4 years old now, and a third of it has been achieved, which is great news. But it does need to be updated. So I don't know what that plan costs, let alone what another plan would cost, a comprehensive plan. This was called a system assessment of existing operational conditions for Helena-West Helena. I'm assuming what we would need, what I would like to see is a financial plan that corresponds to the engineering plan, I guess. But do y'all want to discuss that some more? We didn't, the motion didn't cover that, but we started to talk about it.
Mr. Mayor, Joe St. Columbia, nothing's going to happen until we make it happen. And I think the plan is most essential, and we need to have a written plan that will take us forward from here to get these things done, get these leaks fixed too. We need to have a program and a plan in writing and implement it as our finances, as they come in, and then we can afford to do it. And we can't operate without a plan. So do we need a motion to move forward to making a plan?
Part of it, Mr. St. Columbia, you need to approve the retention of Mr. His plan is likely going to be over $5,000. I know I'm being presumptuous, but considering all the stuff we talked about, I'm sure his engineering fees will be over $5,000, and that's beyond the mayor's spending authority. So you have to prove that as part of the plan. So your motion would be to authorize the mayor to engage in contract with Mr. Kenneth Whalen for professional services and to develop a comprehensive plan for the water utility repairs.
I'll second that motion.
Well, I think somebody's got to make it. Mr. Valley was just stating what it needed to say.
Okay. Well, I'll make the motion.
Okay. All right, I'll try to say this, correct me if I'm wrong. So the motion would be to approve allowing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Walland and Associates regarding a comprehensive strategic plan for the Helena-West Helena water and sewer system. Did I say that right, Mr.
Yes.
Brown?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Ms. Ford.
Yes, it was.
Any other question? Motion has been seconded, made and seconded. Are there any other questions or comments about the plan or about the motion?
Yes, I have a question. Is there any way that he can get us a proposal of how much he thinks this will cost to get that done? Because the way that was stated, it's just, it could be costing up to $250,000. And we are, if we vote on that, we'll be authorizing $250,000.
Well, it has to be appropriated too.
Each step would have to be appropriated, wouldn't it, Mr. Mayor?
Well, the implementation,
yeah,
the implementation would, but not necessarily plan. I guess really.
Miss Crockett's point is well made. I guess it was kind of loose. Ms. St. Columbia, do you have a cap for that? Ms. Crockett, what would you be comfortable with? Would you be comfortable with 10,000, 15,000, 7,000? What would you be comfortable with for purposes of it?
I'm not, well, I guess my question is, I guess, what would he think it would cost him to get us a plan?
Okay,
because
your question is addressed to Mr. Whalen.
Yes, I don't want to undercut it, and he said he can't do it for the cap. And what I'm saying is, it's like if he tell us, well, I can draw up y'all plan for $12,000, between 12,000, 15, whatever. But the way that it's stated now, it does not have a cap on it, and that could go a long out of hand. And I'm not saying that you would do that, Mr. Wiley, I'm just saying.
No, I understand, Ms. Crockett. I think that's a fair, question. This has kind of caught me a little by surprise. I wasn't anticipating, that being done tonight. And I think if the council basically is given permission to the mayor to begin negotiations, and that's a bad word, really and truly, 'cause I've heard, comprehensive plan for the water problems in Helena, and now, I think it was worded water and wastewater. Now, that is a big task. The water and wastewater issues, and then Helena and West Helena, that can be a big task. So I think what we probably need to do is try to come up with what they call a scope of work. Let's see exactly what we need to do, and maybe do it in phases as far as the comprehensive plan. Possibly start with water supply first, sewer second, and then I'm going to need time to take a look. I'd like to get the Bible, as the mayor calls it there, and take a look at that. I think a lot of that work was done by Mr. Ross, and kind of see what is still left on that list. And then I can probably come up with a better idea of what I think it's going to take, and maybe even take by phase, Helena water, Helena wastewater, West Helena water, West Helena wastewater. And then the mayor can go back to the council and keep the council updated as to where we are on that, as far as what that cost would be. I think that's a very fair request, Mr. Crockett.
I withdraw my second.
Okay. All right, I think it's a fair request. Mr. Valley, what would you think about me or the council too? I'll get with Chris Harris with Arkansas Rural Water, come up with RFP for and wastewater with the scope of work like Ken was talking about, and then and then we'll issue that or publish that and see what happens, and then bring that back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, Joe St. Columbia, that's fine with me, and I'll withdraw my motion. But I don't want to see this thing die tonight after we get this one phase done. I think we need to continue on and get, like Mr. Whalen says, we need to work step by step, take the water separate from the waste part, and divide it up into smaller sections and increments, and move. But we need to continue to move forward and getting our city in shape.
And Mayor, I'd like to add that if we could have a report, a written report each month regarding what's going on. We talked about motors going out here, and I was just surprised that we only had maybe 1 or 2 pumps that worked. The others had burned up. But I think we need to be updated monthly on what is going on, what has been accomplished, that type of thing.
And I failed to mention it, Mr. Patterson, I'm not sure if he's on or not. He was having some connectivity issues, but if he is on, I certainly want to recognize him. And if you want to speak to that, but I don't see why we can't do that. And I think it's a good idea, because we do have some very pressing issues, and we should be talking about this every month until we get the bulk of it resolved. So it's a good idea. And I will see to it that we do that. So I guess, would there be any objection to me issuing the RFP with the scope of work on and we'll try to get that. I'll try to get with Chris and Arkansas Rural Water. I'm not sure if they're on either. They might be, but to help design a scope of work and an RFP on that and get that out. Today is Tuesday. We'll get it out, in the next 48 hours or so. See what we get, and I'll report on it Tuesday. If we get something by then great. Does that sound good?
Sounds good with me.
Okay. All right, so if there's no objection, that's how we'll move forward on the.
Excuse me, I thought that's what Mr. Wyland was supposed to be doing, getting the scope of work. Hello?
That was my suggestion, Crockett, was let me try to come up with what that scope would be, so that we can, I can try to come up with an idea of how much engineering effort and how much fees it would take to, to do that. So, but however, if the, you can go out and do the request proposals, or, I can work with the mayor and come up with one to come back to the council with, that we would do here, locally.
Anything else?
But that's what I thought we were talking about. I don't know how somebody else, that's all. When I suggested that we get that, I was not suggesting that we get somebody else. I was only suggesting that we get maybe the estimate and the stuff, and
right.
I wasn't suggesting that we get anybody else. So.
I took what Mr. Wyland said about the scope of work to mean that's how he would come up with the price, is to know what his boundaries were as far as the work that he would have to do. So, but anyway, somewhere between all that, I think we can come up with something for the council. I hope as early as Tuesday. And let's say no later than the next meeting. If for some reason we can't, but we'll make the goal to come up with something about Tuesday. All right. Any other comments about that? Okay, so we'll move on. And so the next two items, we don't have I don't believe there's a set agenda, except that we sent out some invoices, and I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to ask questions about these expenses. And we have Dexter Fortson Associates on here who work on our Scada system, which is our brain for the system. And she also has a proposal going forward for repairs and to our Scada system out in the field, which are the stations that report back to the main sort of brain, I guess you'd say, the nervous system, you might say, of the. Now, a great many of those, because we have so many bypass pumps on our stations, don't have to be, there's no need to do that really until we replace the pumps themselves, which is a bigger issue that I hope will be in Mr. Wyland or the plan that we adopt. But she did submit a comprehensive SCADA plan for the Helena system. And I think that's in your packet or was emailed out, I'm not sure. But she's on here, Jessica's on here to speak about what she's done. And what she has done is basically repair the main station, the main brain system that had not been dealt with for many years. And she's available. Robert McNutt, I don't think is, but he was the one that did the leaking, but Jeff Porfield is and knows a lot about that. Jeff Porfield is on, and he is dealing with our valves in basically the guts of our system there in the Helena plant, and can answer a lot of questions. Honda Forest City is a side-by-side that we use for our sewer ponds, levees, in order to keep them maintained so they don't get in the shape that they were in. The big trucks that drive those levees are part of the problem, and we have to spray around them to keep the rocks and keep the erosion from happening on those levee ponds, in order to keep the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into fixing them from just going bad again. And so they'll primarily use that for those sewer ponds. The other purpose for it is to get to places like Reservoir Hill that are difficult to get in to check on our stations. The Southern Line equipment is for a dump trailer that's used to fix leaks. Basically, the fill in that goes in after a leak. In order to be able to move quickly from one leak to another, they need that dump trailer. And we have, to Mr. St. Columbia's point about fixing leaks, we probably fixed more leaks in the last 3 weeks than we've done in the last 3 months, because of all these problems and issues, and because the winter storm made our existing leaks worse and created many new leaks. Jeff is here to talk about I've already mentioned Jeff Portfield calibration controls. And then Reese Construction, the 19,570, that was the connecting point between the two systems that I spoke of earlier. Blake Allen is just an employee for Rural Water who spent out of his pocket a battery backup system, and we lost power, and our computer basically burned up. And we just reimbursed him for that. Baldwin Construction is the aerator at the West plant that had to be, the inside of it had to be replaced during the West Helena crisis. And those invoices are attached. So be glad to take any questions about any of that. And then the next thing would be, well, I want to make sure I've asked the guests on tonight to be available for questions about what they're doing, and also what they've, in the case of Dexter Fortson, what they've proposed to fix their system. And Jessica, do you want to just briefly talk about what you already have done at the Helena plant? And
Sure.
what, I guess, if you don't mind, tell them what a Scada system is for anybody listening that might not know.
Okay. The Scada system, Scada stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And what that system does is it reads your, it's connected to your pump systems, whether it be at your well or your booster pump stations or your lift stations in your case. It's also connected to your tanks, and it reports all of the data collected. We do it through radio communication back to the base computer that's located at the treatment plant. And it can also control all of these sites. So you don't have to physically get in the car and drive across town to go to a site to turn a pump on or off. All of that can be managed through the Scada. This is actually a system that Helena has had in existence from us since July of 2002 is when it was originally purchased, and installed over probably the next 8 to 10 months after July, because with you guys have a total of 19 sites, including the plant, that are on the system. And so you can monitor everything from your tank levels to the chlorine amount that's being pumped into the water there at the plant. It monitors the speed of your pumps, the amperage of the pumps, and all of that information actually is reported back to the computer, and then in turn it can create alerts for when there are problems. So if your tank level gets below a certain, most people use percentage, you can do it by feet. It will send an alert to the computer or to your operators, because there is an option to have it actually give your operator a telephone call, so that you know that there's a problem. The amps in the pumps, it can tell you, like, if you've got a clog somewhere, particularly in the lift stations, because if the pump's running and it's not doing what it's supposed to do, it'll cause your amps to go out of whack. And so all of that is reported through that Scada system. And it is just a way to 24/7 have a visual indication of what's going on in your system. The software is set up so that you can actually click on each, you can go to each site and see what's going on in real time. And when we came up last week and actually installed a new computer there at the plant office, the one that you had got fried, or you had a power failure. So there was an issue and it needed to be replaced. So we did that. And then we also put on that computer a remote access software. And what that enables the operators to do is to, from their telephones or a laptop or tablet, whatever the city is approval remote access things are, devices, they can actually be at home and log in and see that system and know that there's an issue or anything that needs to be addressed in your after hours situations. The remote access software also allows Dexter Fortson to help you remotely with any issues that might come up. So if your operators run into something, we can log in and help you out. It is a very secure, I know there's been lots of, or here recently, there's been some issues with hackers being able to get into some water systems, but it's called Real VNC, and it is a multi-layered, multi-step, often process to get in. The mayor witnessed it. He saw us. It takes quite a few steps to get into it in order to even access the water system remotely. While we were also there, we went through some software training with Oscar and Ricky there in the office or at the plant. And then we spent a day going around to every single site, with the exception of Reservoir Hill, because we couldn't get up the hill. We were told the street conditions weren't safe for us to travel up there. So we went to all of the other sites and did a visual inspection of all of the current Dexter Fortson equipment that has been out there since 2002. Some of it has had service, you call us when it breaks. Some of it has not had any service at all since it's been out there. The condition of everything is obviously being almost 20 years old. There's lots of wear and tear on things. But in the instance of, I'll bring up the Phillips Street well. Since you've recently brought that well back online, the Scada unit that's actually at that well is not operational because various parts of it have been removed to be used as replacement parts of other sites. And that has happened at several of the sites. So the comprehensive plan that I have sent over to the mayor gives a detailed breakdown of what needs to happen at each site in order to bring everything back into the intended operation of the Scada system, which is to give you or the operators the full control and monitoring and alarming of the whole system all in one place. It is there are several of the sites, like the mayor mentioned earlier, the couple of the lift stations that are running off the bypass. Any of your site locations that are like that, putting new Scada equipment in there is not going to necessarily be a priority right now, because like at the lift stations with the bypass, the Scada can't do anything with the bypass pumps as far as reporting and controlling. So like those would be your lower priority places that would need to be addressed in order to bring it fully back online with Scada. But what I did was I gave you the information for each site as your baseline. And then because of the other areas where you have more immediate attention needs, you are able to pick and choose and tell us which sites you want to have updated on the SCADA portion. And that's all in the comprehensive plan. So you can, it'll be on a as needed basis for you guys.
Thanks, Jessica.
Sure.
Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing? Jeff Porterfield.
Yeah, right now we're in the process of replacing the valves and actuators at the Helena plant. It's basically some of the valves have actually got holes in them. They're leaking water past, so we have a lot of water loss at the plant even. And so we're trying to address all of that and get it all back functioning correctly to where the plant can work right. I've been working on the SCADA system as well, because they're a little ways away. And so I've been working with the DFA on replacing and working on some of those sites already. We've already upgraded a couple of those sites with since I've been in the loop. I was actually the one that actually told DFA to come down and look because that computer was out of date. The computer world's a short-lived thing anymore, and so we were well past our death rate on that computer, and so it was time to upgrade. And so that needed to be done. I think that was our first start, and then like she was saying, the rest of these sites, a lot of them are functional somewhat, and so it'll be a deal to where a priority maybe needs to be addressed on those sites, which ones are just not functioning at all and what needs to be done. So you can kind of, strategically plan those replacements and stretch it out over time. So you wouldn't be looking at that because that comprehensive of a system to replace would be very expensive. And so by being able to upgrade it like we're able to do, it saves y'all a lot of money in the long term. And so I'm also a master electrician as well as an instrument tech. And so that's where I come into play. I'm a service guy. And so I've been working with Mike and Benzine and all of them for a few years now, even back when Ken Bertizzi was here. And so I've been helping them try to update and get things going. We made improvements over at the Helena plant, but it's just a little more time and a little more funding is what's going to be required because it had gotten in pretty bad shape. The water leaking was something I thought needed to really be addressed. They got that done. I think that helped out a tremendous amount over there as well. So we're making steps. I think are advantageous to the city for the end result, and I think that's what y'all are really concentrating on now, which is good. We need to get it back to where it's functioning, where it'll be productive, and also it'll end up saving you some money because of being more efficient with it. So.
Thank you, Jeff. And I did want to say, Jeff's been very critical to this whole thing. And Jack Ross called him and urged me to call him because he had been so helpful to the city over the years. And Jeff has really come through for us, and so has Jessica. So we want to thank y'all. And I'll tell you, they were both involved before this crisis, but on that computer, we also was it a Friday? I'm losing track of time, but I think it was right before you got here, Jessica. We had a power outage in downtown Helena that kept going on and off, and
they killed it
that morning, and it fried our computer that was there in Helena. And I mean, we couldn't have timed that any better, but because you showed up, was it later that day or the next day? Pretty soon.
Yeah.
Later that day, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, well, we got there on Tuesday last week. Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, I know it runs together.
But and Chris Harris, who I can't say enough good things about either. With Art Solar Water was on hand the entire time, and he saved one pump by blowing out the one of the gadgets that had gotten one of the fuel deals that got clogged up, and I joked that he was giving it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation because we were staring at things like evacuating a hospital. That's how bad things got. And then when the computer fried, he knew how to take a electronic box out of another old computer that was sitting around and sort of arbitrage that into or manage that into fixing it until Jessica could get here and replace it. And on top of that, the security issue is big. Microsoft stopped supporting that computer several years ago, a couple years ago now, I guess. And in recent news events, the famous one being recently in Florida, where someone hacked into a water system and came very close to poisoning the system. So we were very exposed from that point of view. And now, thanks to Jessica, thanks to Jeff, thanks to Jack, a few others, we were able to, and Chris, we were able to get that resolved. So that's something that should be a weight lifted. And at the West plant, I should say, even though it's a different vendor, we also got a desktop in that Chris Harris and Rural Water helped us directed or guided us to, and replaced a system that was no longer working, a desktop system for the Scada system over there. So, and then we also did some similar security work over there, so that system is likewise now firewalled and secure in ways that it had not been before. So we did a lot. We have done a lot in 3 weeks, and these guys are a big part of it.
Just to let you know also, y'all were not the only system that had problems with this winter escapade we had. I do work all over the state, and my phone just didn't hardly shut up the whole time. Everybody was out of water. They were wondering why nothing was working. And I'm like, just every customer you've got probably has a water leak right now and keeping their faucets dripping. So you can just imagine that the water demand that you've got. So everybody couldn't keep up. It was not just y'all. So this is a statewide emergency that hit a lot of water systems, My system here was on a boil order. So, I mean, y'all did good to survive the way you did, really, because of how bad it was. So.
And I see Mike Alexander on here. I want to say kudos to him as well. He was there with us all night, a couple of nights. It was a team effort. I'm going to tell you that it was a team effort, and we're still going to have that. I was talking to somebody yesterday. He's going to donate some money. We're going to have that state cookout for everybody that showed up. That horrible weekend. But anyway, so I want to open it up for questions. And also, I cannot tell. I looked through or swiped through, and I cannot tell who all is on here because some of the phone names just say, iPhone or something, and I can't really tell who is on here and who isn't. So if I've missed somebody, that's been part of this that I was talking about, please feel free to speak up now. I don't mean to pass you by or anything. I just don't know that, can't tell that you're on. But I want to open it up to the council or anybody else, council or administration who has any questions. About any of these things. It can seem kind of boring, I guess. But the thing about water and utilities are that you want people to be able to take them for granted. And they do. But if you're doing your job, then that's what they're doing. They turn on the spigot and they get healthy, good water. And so we're not there yet by a long shot as far as where we need to be. But what we're talking about tonight is certainly a good omen for what we are doing. And but again, I want to open it up for any conversation or questions or comments. That's really all I had for now, although we could take questions, and I'm sure there are things I haven't addressed, but there's so much we could literally talk about this all night, and I don't want to make y'all endure that, so unnecessarily. Okay, going once, going twice. Thank y'all very much. Thank you, our guests, for showing up, and Ken and Mike and Jack, I think, is on here, who has done a lot, and we appreciate that. So we'll talk. We got more work to do, as Ms. Ford alluded to, and everybody else. We have a lot of work to do. We are not at all there. I think in some ways, these crises have helped focus our attention on this better than we have in the recent past. So, and I include myself in that. So thank you very much. Thank everybody else. If there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second moves adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Ford seconds the motion. There is no objection. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank y'all very much, and y'all have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.